boy. Oh boy. What is going on with FF7 Remake? We have entered a new timeline of weird in the latest news that has come out for FF7 Remake Intergrade. I was going to do a proper theory vid with full-blown edits and all the saucy trimmings in between, but I'm so hyped to get this theory out because this is blowing my noodle and is confirming some of the theories. Well, not confirming, but adding to my confidence that some of the weird and more out there themes we've covered, dream space, and that everything in this game is like a semi-illusory, semi-reality, and Square Enix, they are playing 5D chess with us. And they have been for years. What we have to remember is that FF7 Remake was getting concepts written all the way back as far as On the Way to a Smile. I don't think people realise that there are so many additions in the compilation that Square Enix have knowingly been balancing. I genuinely believe the remake is not only going to be the full-rounded conclusion of all of these themes, I genuinely think that the remake saga is the fifth and final act of Loveless. I know some other people, I'm going on the podcast today, this might come out after that. Sleep Easy agrees. I know even Audrey, from seeing this latest details, their brain has started cooking in the similar kind of vein. So what am I talking about? Well, basically, Intergrade is the PS5 package, but Square Enix have just come out and said that the episode Yuffie is actually going to be called Intermission. Intermission, as in the break between a theatrical performance. Now, I won't take too long covering this, but I'll certainly leave links to all these theory videos, because this one here, Jessie, is a red herring. She literally is a red herring. This was the theory where I started cooking up the idea that what if this really is all just a performance? I mean, it certainly makes sense if you think about the whispers, the plot ghosts, as in all the characters in the remake are like actors on a stage, and the whispers are here to make sure they stay on script. They don't change the original's performance. There's an awful lot of this kind of manipulation to the show happening, where only two people are privy to it being a show. Of course, that's Aerith and Sephiroth, but specifically with Jessie, her being the princess of the Golden Saucer, even the moments in the game when we do deviate from the original, of course one of those being Jessie's divergent mission, where we go and find her dad, find out he's in a coma, and that she theorizes his consciousness is trapped like in different gradients of height to the heart of the planet, which that's been a theme all the way since OG and has existed in the compilation. And that's essentially what I think is happening, because there's two Midgars, remember? We did this whole video that there's the new Midgar, like a new stage has been set for this saga, but by showing this other Midgar, and it definitely is OG Midgar, and they are two distinct designs that Square have intentionally done because the reactors, covered it, they're laid out pretty definitively different. And what's strange about this stage, I may have even said like the cats in esoteric interpretation are there to symbolize when you're being led astray, and the cats would always appear and Square would always like pan up on them, and Cloud would be like good kitty when he went to like moments he shouldn't, when they wiped his memory. And I do believe they're kind of like a symbol of like the paradox of this new re-happening, this new reopening of the live stream. I mean, it could be a reopening of the live stream, it could be the gradients of the heart of the planet, but basically when we finish the mission, we go to Jessie's like house and we try to peek behind the curtain, or Cloud does, and Wedge stops him. Like we weren't able to look behind the veil of what was going on. I mean, we even have that when we go to Deep Ground and Cloud sees the experiments in the tank and he has the memory. He's peeked behind and the ghosts have to come in and undo that freaking memory. And then I started thinking, like, when Wedge was like, don't trust anything Jessie says, it's all an act for her. And then he says, life's a play, and loves the show. No, no, it was life's a show and loves the play. Loves the play. Loveless. Now we have episode Yuffie being called Intermission, an episode in which we are meeting Weiss the Immaculate, who is a Sviet, and by extension, embroiled in the schemes and plans of Genesis. That's essentially what, when you dive into the proto-materia and the nature of Minerva, that's essentially what the Sviets were after. Weiss the Immaculate is all about purifying corruption, and that is what Minerva was making Genesis an agent of. That's what the proto-materia, the Sviets, were doing essentially does. It says it prevents the coming of the Advent. Now that was the Advent Children, where obviously geostigma was affecting all the people, and you can kind of deduce that the proto-material was acting as like a filtration system on the planet that was somewhat containing Minerva. Genova. And the idea that maybe Minerva had created that materia to keep Genova sealed in the northern crater. Well, we got a whole load of character profiles from Square about who's going to be in this episode, Yuffie. Characters mostly consisting of the alt Avalanche branch, which I'm so excited to see so many more of those. Like we had Barrett talk about 3 characters that we've never heard of: Finn, Nelly, and that was the third one. Can't remember. Scrote. We're going to Scrote. And now we have CG. We have the chick Fujita. This guy's called Billy Bob. Billy Bob. Who came up with that name? Jesus Christ, give that man a pay rise. A dude who can drink as much as he likes without getting wrecked, apparently. I'm not going to cover this too much, but this is very strange. There's a character called Polk, and his thing is he's a gamer who is obsessed with the game Fort Condor, and it helps him devise like real-world strategies, which I'm happy with that. No, Fort Condor, I really thought they'd skip that off, and I love that little RTS. I just hope it's a mini-game in the game, and not a freaking mobile game. But then we have character profile on Weiss, and look at the quote they have attached to Weiss. "Let us raise the curtains in the beginning of what is called the end." Let us raise the curtains in the beginning of what is called the end. And that, as Audrey rightly pointed out, seems like a direct parallel of what Genesis, when he came back and collected Weiss's body, the last thing he said, it's time to raise the curtain on the final act. Oh boy. And the whole notion of the beginning of the end, I think this kind of answers what I've had in my mind, is that essentially all of the events of the compilation have happened: Advent Children, Dirge of Cerberus, everything with Weiss, and that Sephiroth has essentially used the Terror corrupting Advent Children. Or this was one theory I had, that it's Sephiroth who's done it, but we have to now consider if Minerva and Genesis have not enabled, but maybe gone along, or are some way also responsible for this remake saga happening, because this has of course been their plan the entire time, I believe, to rewrite everything in Advent Children that went wrong and out of their control, to essentially give it all another shot. And of course we saw Weiss in the VR sat on what looked like President Shinra's throne, and most of our conclusions was, this is just VR world, it's whatever, it's nonsense, it means nothing, you can add anything in there. I've kind of always had a different opinion, because I'm like, nah, VR is connected to Mako energy, just like the VR segment in the game. That's how Cloud had that trip out, or that foreshadowing of the meteor coming down, because Mako is the memory of the planet, and one that is not contained by space or time. The past, the present, the future all exist in there in one moment. And if you have machines that can extract that and actually interact with that memory, well, that's why in the VR segment Chadley is giving us fights with the primals, the summons, the primals. Too much FF14. 5.5 was so sexy. But yeah, because those beings, summons, we found out they were previously Cetra. Like they did this whole thing where Shiva was essentially a queen of the Cetra, who gave her life into the life stream, the memory of it. She donated her essence, essentially, to become Shiva and keep that eternal ice tornado around the northern crater as a containment. So I always thought, okay, well, that means that the concept of Weiss even exists, and Chadley is, of course, Hojo's AI, and Hojo is essentially trying to become sexy Weiss through the synaptic net dive and, the worldwide network. And that's why he could be here. But Square, I think, are going down a different route, because the rest of his description is Weiss is a ruler donned in all white who controls Shinra's top secret underground research center, Deep Ground. He hones superhuman strength, is very charismatic, sadistic, and cruel. Due to his unparalleled strength, he is restrained to a throne hidden deep beneath Midgar, and is only released when he is being experimented on. As he is kept under inhumane conditions, he quietly waits for a chance to exact his revenge. What? I mean, the only reason that doesn't fully make sense is because Weiss at this point in the canon, Dirge of Cerberus is years after OG. And what that means is while Square are not adverse to change in the timeline, I mean, they're literally here breaking the canonicity, toe punting it into the moon. But even just as far as a few months prior to the beginning of OG FF7, Weiss hasn't undergone any kind of transformation or experimentation, because we see that Genesis slips into a slumber and that deep ground soldiers Nero and Weiss, and at this point they're only regular sort of soldiers, they take Genesis's body to deep ground. Now it doesn't seem, and that's in September of 007, the game begins in December 007. So is 2-3 months really enough time for Weiss to become this utter natter? I don't think it is, but that's because I do believe that everything in compilation that's happened, it's already happened, and this is all a performance. This is the final act of Loveless. And let's just dive a little bit deeper into that, because with Loveless, the final act that is missing is Act 5, and Nomura has stressed to us many times that the remake saga is essentially the 5th installment of the series. So I was like, oh boy. So let's start dissecting what the 5th chapter is. Loveless would take me forever to interpret, but essentially what is Loveless? What is the importance of it? Well, it really is important in the sense that it kind of contains the secrets of the universe. While Genesis is all obsessed with it and he takes it to further extensions, that then is actually written in the prophecy, like he misinterprets it so often, and he's trying to figure it out. And I want to be very clear on that, because that is why the 5th chapter we do have, there's actually a lot of conclusion we can make that it's not actually the accurate. Let me pull Loveless up. What the Crisis Core keyword Altmania kind of deduces to us is that the 5th installment could be just from Genesis's mind. So the 5th act we have so far is, even if the morrow is barren of promises, nothing shall forestall my return. To become the dew that quenches the land, to spare the sands, the seas, the skies, I offer thee this silent sacrifice. And the reason why it's believed that that could be just from Genesis's own head is because his apocalypse ability, which Zack of course can use, which kind of backs up even more the memory shamanism video I just did. That not only does memory equal real world fantasy strength, when I say real world I mean in FF7's world, like Cloud gets more powerful every time he gains more memories, but I also was talking about how it binds characters together, and that characters can actually get their strength from the memories of the people they're closest to. No more clearer was this than Tifa actually lending Cloud his lending her memories to him. Of course, she was kind of altering it and going along that he was soldier so he could cope. And like Sephiroth said, that had become Cloud's everything. That had literally become his bedrock, his pillar of strength. I mean, Zack literally passed Cloud his memories, his dreams, his honor, his hopes, the legacy of the Buster Sword, and that gave Cloud power. But yeah, going even further with Zack, in Crisis Core, you've of course got the digital mind wave system, which is like the little pachinko slots where people that Zack has known and met, like come in, you can get 3 Aeriths or 3 songs, and that basically aligns his spiritual resonance, as per keyword Altmania, with that individual, allowing him to use their abilities. So when Zack uses Genesis' Apocalypse, we've got the last, and this is throughout the game, before the final chapter of Loveless actually gets written by the live stream. It pens it in, but it pens in Genesis's version because it's in his apocalypse. It's his digital mind wave. It's his final act. And what got me thinking about that, how it married up with my other headcanon, is if the 5th act is incomplete, and even if the morrow is barren of promises, that got me thinking about my God Cloud theory. Now, if you haven't heard it, I'm going to summarize it real quick. The idea that a promise between Tifa and Cloud starts the game. You know, they're kids. Cloud's about to go to soldier. Tifa asks him to promise that if she ever needs him, he'll come. And that really sets up the game. The entire crux of pretty much everything. Cloud even getting into Avalanche. The whole shebang-a-lang, a promise between Cloud and Tifa. And I was like, how beautifully symbolic and what a beautiful parallel it would be if then, you know, with the love triangle, it was a promise between Aerith and Cloud that ends the game. or is the resolution to it. And I really got stuck on that idea, because if you see my Goddess Aerith video, my memory shamanism, I've been talking for the longest time. I think that Aerith is replacing Minerva as the livestream goddess, of course, going a little bit further than what I did in the ayahuasca video, that she's representing this shamanistic mother archetype. And I started thinking, oh my god, the mothers is such a core theme in 7. You know, Genova pretending to be Sephiroth's mother, Genesis seeking it in Minerva, Cloud's mum dying, beginning Cloud's entire journey. Of course, all of that makes so much sense, because Sakaguchi, when he wrote FF7, it was just after the death of his mother. And he had this kind of realization that while her passing wasn't this great, grandiose, dramatic event that he kind of expected it to be, he actually said it was more just like hollow and sad. But then as he sort of processed it, he kind of came to realize that how beautiful it was, the memories that he had had. That's why the themes of impermanence and coming into the acceptance of death, I believe, is so core. And not only is it tied to Bushido and covered in the Berserker vid, about the warriors getting into Valhalla, that's how the characters gain their honor, through the transcending of the fear of death. And essentially how you do that is by kind of detaching from your over-attachment to your individual self. That is the curse of individualization. No, to be able to realize, oh, I'm not really Jake. Jake is just a name. Sorry, Jake's my real name. Peasant. Peasant isn't real. Everything that I think is real about me, who I am, what I like, the nationality I'm born into, the way people think of me, the way I think of them, everything to do with the ego, it really is illusory. It's a human concept. And to be able to detach from that over-identification is the theme of FF7, because again, the ghosts and the whispers, like the ghosts in the train graveyard, all the tormented souls are people who couldn't let go of the things that had happened in their life. They can't let go of their individualization. Sephiroth can't let go of his, he won't. And that's essentially the whole theme of F7 is once you let it go, you just disperse into the life stream. Now, some people have said that that's the gift of the goddess. Genesis has also sort of thought that. Some people also think that that is what the promised land is. But what I want to say is that none of these things are actual definite. That we don't know that's the promised land. We don't know that's the gift of the goddess. In fact, I like the answer Genesis offers up. It's just one of his many speculations. He says that to ponder the mystery of the gift is the gift itself. And that's poignant, man. Like, just the ability to be able to ponder the mysteries of life is the greatest gift of consciousness that we humans essentially have. There's other conclusions that the gift of the goddess will basically access the powers of regeneration and rebirth. That's why Nero, before he resurrects his brother Weiss, he kind of says that, I never thought I'd see the powers of rebirth again. Weiss actually gets resurrected from it. And of course, Genesis's degradation actually gets cured. And the way he did that was through setting up the dynamics of Loveless, or coming to the realization that there's 3 core dynamics in Loveless. Because it's a play, it's a story where there are 3 characters. One's called the Traveller, the Hero, and the Prisoner. And these 3 friends, as they state, they're trying to find the gift of the goddess. And I cannot stress how important these 3 roles are in what enabled Genesis to be able to come to his realization. Because he spends the whole game believing that he's the hero, Zack's the prisoner, and that Angeal was the Traveller. But what actually gets concluded at the end in Genesis's mind is he realizes that he was the prisoner the entire time, Zack was the hero, and that Zack essentially was his gift. And that whole thing about Zack being the hero, that's why at the end when Zack's going up in sky after he's died and Angeal's bringing him to the live stream, that's why he says, do you think I became a hero? Because Zack even is the prisoner as well, because that's what, like, Zack, he has this moment where he's like breaking down. He's like, why is everyone making me do stuff I don't want to do? He has to kill Angeal, he has to turn on Sephiroth, kill his friend Genesis. He even has to do a protection mission on Hojo, and yeah, while he's in Soldier, he's being forced to basically corrupt his own moral values. And it's only when Zack ditches Shinra, goes on this journey to Benora and these other parts of the world, meeting these new people, going to the Wu Tai and actually getting the perspective from the Wutai soldiers that actually the indoctrination, the prison that Shinra had put Zack in, starts to fade. It's through the process of travel, and that's how he becomes a hero. So I started thinking, man, how would we define these 3 roles for the characters in the remake right now? Now, initially I was like, oh, well, we could say like Sephiroth's the prisoner, you know, he's trapped by Jenova, like the lies and schemes of Jenova. You could say like Aerith is the traveler. After all, she is literally the last of a nomadic traveling race that traveled continent to continent, not planet to planet. That was a mistranslation, and that's literally her role. And then you could say Cloud's the hero, but I was like, actually, when I think about it, I think the reason why in Crisis Core these roles interchange and even Genesis can't work it out is because I think this role isn't a role assigned to any specific individual or person in the game. I think this is a role that every person must go through in Final Fantasy VII and us in the real world if we want to essentially unlock our highest selves, the highest gifts of the universe there is to offer. Because think about it for a sec. Really, this beat applies to every single character. I mean, let's even start with the smallest ones, like Naniki, for example. He literally spends his time in a prison. He's trapped by Hojo, an experiment. He breaks out, he travels. Well, actually, he's a prisoner to Cosmo, and it's Bugenhagen who has to convince Red that he has to go on this travel. Even Bugenhagen got it, and he does, and the Red becomes a hero. Aerith, she's literally trapped in Shinra, and her mother has to break her out and dies in the process. And then Aerith has to go onto her travels, and she's fearful about going from prisoner to traveler. That's why she misses the still sky. She has a fear of open sky, because the prison also acts as like this comfort blanket that you don't want to leave. You don't want to leave your own prison. Like Persona 5 said, like a prison can sometimes be an appealing option to stay in, even if the keys of the door are left open. And yeah, she says that she goes through the whole game being called by something. An intuition leads her to the ancient forest, followed by sleeping forest, then to the Forgotten City, and then she becomes a hero. Sephiroth, let's take him for a sec. Sephiroth, definitely a prisoner. I mean, he spent his entire young life as an experiment with Hojo, and he believes, so he's at the prisoner stage, he believes that if he travels the cosmos, as his mother did once long ago, use the planet as a vessel to travel, that's how Sephiroth believes he'll become a hero. In his mind, Seph's a hero. He believes that he's gonna redeem a fallen race and lead the life stream and the souls of it onto a greater future. And then finally Cloud, because honestly, you could honestly take this beat for every character. That's what's so cool about this. Cloud starts as a prisoner in his own mind the entire game, and it's only by traveling that he can become the hero. And I think that's Cloud at the part 1 of the remake we're at. He's currently in the process of going from prisoner to traveler. And I think that's why Tifa, what did she say when she saves him? When at the end of the Rufus fight, she grabs him. I'll play the line.
You gotta be better than this, if you're gonna play the hero.
You gotta be better than this if you want to play the hero. Play the hero. She doesn't say be the hero, become the hero. No, not be a hero. She says play the hero. And I think it's because Square are hinting that part of Cloud's spiritual evolution has the attachment to Loveless, and that they are hinting, and I think that's why we have all of these truly baffling elements in FF7 that have turned some fans off. The thing that Square have just chucked in Destiny and they don't know what they're doing. I totally disagree. I think Square Enix are being fucking sneaky little geniuses, actually setting up the final act of Loveless, the unwritten bit. And just going back to that promise with Aerith. So the reason I start thinking that Loveless is actually more about Aerith than anyone else, again, because I think she is the real goddess, and she is the one who has the gift everlasting for humanity, and that she's actually going to give it to humanity through Cloud. Because she too, like Tifa, is trying to get Cloud to go through from prisoner to traveller to hero, and she kind of is encouraging Cloud to do that. Remember, in the ancient forest, one of the last things she said to Cloud was to look after himself. In that same forest, I'll quickly say, I think it's the forest, Seth says, that girl's going to be a problem. We're going to have to take care of her soon, or something like that. Because you could see Cloud as kind of being an enemy of Aerith, in the sense that he is a failed experiment. He does have Jenova. He is corrupted by Jenova, and he's not mentally strong enough to fight it off. That's why he attacks Aerith. That's why he nearly comes close to freaking decapitating her. In Seth's eyes, Cloud is on his side, and Aerith is the enemy. That's why he talks in that familiar way. We're going to have to deal with her. And the only reason I say that is because in the Traveller, Prisoner and Hero, in the dramatisation of Loveless, of which we have seen scattered throughout even FF7 Remake, you go through the slums and people talking about the play and the final act. Have you seen it? We're going to get tickets. This is the show date. That has even existed in OG. But we'll cover that in a minute, because in the final act, where is it? So it says that the prisoner escapes and is critically wounded. Cloud, only to end up in the care of a woman from the enemy faction whom he falls in love with. He lives a peaceful life, but is tortured by the promise he made to his friend. Now, of course, this woman in the story could be Tifa, because of course she's the one who looks after Cloud first when he's ill, but it's just because of the enemy faction whom he falls in love with. Like that idea that could perceive Aerith as the enemy, and Aerith saying, Cloud, don't fall in love with me, which I'll quickly add to that. A lot of us, and myself included, I thought, the reason why Aerith is saying that is because she knows she has to die. She's resigned herself to her fate. And she doesn't want it to hurt Cloud. She doesn't want him to have a breakdown like he did in Advent Children from her death. But have we considered that she's actually saying it to make it easier for herself? I get massive Yuna vibes with Aerith. Like, Yuna has her summoner duty, just like Aerith has her Cetra duty, but like we saw with Yuna, is she's also a human. She also wants to have relationships. She wants to live her own life. And like Tidus tries to convince them, they have that beautiful breakdown scene. I think that's even at the flowers, when Aerith says there's one more step to be taken or we won't hear them, and she clenches her fist. I strongly believe she's talking about she has to sacrifice herself. And then just after that line, she says this, but maybe I'll just quit. I seem to be good at that, or give up. And I pondered on that line for a bit, but I think that's what it means. Like, I'm good at giving up. That's what I do. Like, she's resigned herself to dying, and that she doesn't even consider altering her own fate. That's pretty crazy when you think about it. Like, she's altering fate or breaking humanity away from the constraints of destiny, which is essentially a crime against their free will, which is such a fundamental core theme of Final Fantasy. They don't have free will at this point. And Aerith breaks it, and she says she hesitated. Maybe that's why I hesitated, because we'll be changing ourselves. I think in changing fate, what Aerith has done is she's essentially opened up a new avenue where she's being confronted with, should I actually go and sacrifice myself again, or be with the ones I care about? And I think this decision is going to get harder now that Zack's back, now that there's potentially other options available to her, and maybe that's why she said to Cloud, don't fall in love with me. I mean, even the Hollow theme song of the game, it comes across as an Aerith and Cloud power ballad about never letting go. Will I let you go this time? What if I'd have done something different? Shine bright once more, guide me to you, smile bright once more, this time I will never let you go. I get the impression that there's going to be a real contention on the sacrifice of Aerith, and while I definitely think it should go ahead, I think the choice of it being completely free will this time, where there is no planetary obligation, there is no duty obligation, that could be the missing act of Loveless. Because you've got to think about it, that this act so far that Genesis has tried to work out is while Minerva's been in control of the live stream. Well, what if the final act is if a act of true selfless free will is performed? A promise is fulfilled between two characters who are destined to come back to each other once more. Like Kate had said, Aerith and Cloud's stars are aligned, and in the moment at the end of this game, whatever the resolution is, because I do believe Cloud will have to make a definitive decision between falling for the path of Sephiroth or falling for Aerith. And I think what the two paths will be is, you could see it as maybe Sephiroth will torment Cloud with a reality where the people he loves are still alive. It could be why he's setting up like so much hurt with it, like reminding Cloud of his mother dying, like to a much further extent than OG, like impersonating her voice, impersonating Zack's, like saying he specifically killed her, and the scene where he gets like really pissed off and angry. Like if Cloud has to accept a reality where the people he cares about most are alive, like Zack, Biggs, Jesse, Wedge, whoever it will be, but he has to do it at the expense of the memories that he has accumulated over his life. And that's Advent Children, that's like Denzel, that's Marlene, that's everything that he has become. Would he sacrifice it to bring back those he loved? And I think that is the snare Sephiroth's trying to set him up for, and Aerith is trying to counter. That's why she's telling him, like, these moments, they're precious, they're fleeting, but we have to make the most of every moment, because life is precious, life is fleeting. And I think she's trying to instill that value in Cloud, so that when he makes the decision at the end, I hope that the promise will be to restore the universe of FF7 to its OG canonicity, where the characters who, whatever reason, kept temporarily alive, they return to the live stream, and that is honoured in the same way OG was. And that would really fit, because we do have, from the dramatization, because this is for the final act, the 5th act of Loveless, because even back in OG they've been alluding to it. There's this kind of funny scene where Sid Highwind actually went to watch Loveless and he fell asleep the entire play, but he woke up in the final act, and Sid quotes this following scene. Again, between a woman and her lover who is leaving. Just think of like the forest and shit, the ancient forest. Do you really have to leave? I promised. The people I love are waiting. I don't understand, not at all, but please take care of yourself. Of course I'll come back to you. Even if you don't promise to wait, I'll return, knowing you'll be here. This isn't just some OG throwaway line that Square Enix mindlessly put in, because they brought it back in Crisis Core. An email from Kunzel, he says he's seen the stage production, and he also quotes the line, "Of course I'll come back to you. Even if you don't promise to wait, I'll return, knowing you'll be here." One of Aerith's last line to Cloud was that after it was all over, she would come back. I mean, she never freaking did. I mean, you could say she did in the live stream, the same OG game where Cloud at the end says, "I'll go to Aerith." He says, "Tifa, I understand it. I think I can go see Aerith." I'm just gonna play a few other lines from my Advent Children and stuff.
You came. Even though you're about to break. That's a good sign. I never blamed you. Not once. You came for me. That's all that matters.
No longer be with the living. Aerith also knew that the sadness was also with those who she left behind. They didn't know that she still existed as her soul. They didn't need to know. Even if she wished they did, the sadness wouldn't be healed if they knew the truth. The thought of everyone's sorrow made the pain in her even worse. Aerith was in even greater pain when she thought about Cloud. At first, she thought he'd somehow had some similarities to her first love. Even so, his looks, voice, and personality weren't similar, and he also made her think of him as a mysterious person. But soon it didn't matter. She loved him much more than her first love. Cloud was her hero, and he couldn't keep away from danger. She saw him as someone full of confidence, cool, and gave the impression that he would disappear in an instant if she took her eyes off him. She wanted to stay by his side forever if she could. She really wanted to. It was as if his mind was going to shatter. She wanted to comfort him. If she wasn't the last survivor of the Cetra, she probably would have done so without a doubt. However, the man in black and silver, who was once a hero, had taken over the will of the calamity that fell from the sky, Genova, and was in a state of madness. Aerith could sense from the whispers of the planet that something could be done to prevent the worst from happening. She also knew that it was something that only she, the last remaining Cetra, could do. She could only obtain the in-depth knowledge from the Forgotten City. But heading there also meant that she would become the greatest obstruction to Sephiroth's plans. That was where Aerith hesitated. Would she let all humans die? Or was she going to avoid such a disaster in exchange for her life? But she never did think about it, and was already prepared. When she did hesitate about leaving Cloud in sorrow, she would think about how it wouldn't save her companions or the people of the world. She had already made up her mind. There was no other choice. It was all for Cloud, too.
So in the dramatization version of the fifth act, which again could be inaccurate, we have the thing about a promise between a lover and a man not wanting to part but having to do it and coming back. We then have Genesis' version saying, if the morrow is barren of promises, nothing shall forestall my return, aka the promise hasn't been made. Hence why Loveless can't be complete. And what did they say in the original 7 Remake trailer, the first one? What was the line that they blew everyone's noodles with? At last, the promise has been made. Oh, at last the promise has been made. So they're kind of saying the fifth compilation of the FF7 universe, the promise has been made, and that's why it's come into existence. The fifth act is all about promises, and how does this not all tie around? It damn well should into what the promised land is. Because I've always said I hope that when Cloud brings the souls back, maybe 500 years later, maybe not, maybe they build Neo Midgar straight after the game, whatever it may be. That'd be so cool. Like Reeve actually building an eco city, the harmony of humans while they love home. They've actually come to realize that the planet is their bigger home and that they need to care for it. What if Neo Midgar is the promised land? And that was a promise between Cloud and Aerith. And I can't even think, because Barrett, he talks about the prophecy, unto her promised land shall we return and whatnot. And he kind of asks Aerith about it, and what does Aerith say?
They've been searching for the promised land for a long time.
And they must think you can lead them to it. Can you?
Nope. Someday, maybe, I'll find it in me.
She doesn't know. Maybe. The events haven't happened yet. That which lies ahead does not yet exist. The fifth act is still being written. And this whole thing about Aerith, having to choose whether she wants to defy her own fate or go along with it. I was having a late night chat with Andy, and Andy Watson posted me. He was watching my stream and he said, did you notice that when Seth and Aerith fight just each other, Seth asked this, can you not see your future? It's kind of like Sephiroth is thinking as well, you're sitting here fighting for these humans, for these peoples, for these outcomes. Can you not see your own future? You're gonna die. And that's the thing, Aerith keeps that's what she's so great at. She keeps her cards close to her chest. I really don't think she's showing Sephiroth just how much she knows. In fact, that was part of Maiden Who Travels Through the Planet. Like she's in there, she helped these characters be free of the curse of individualization, and she actually finds Sephiroth in there, and as she approaches, she actually feels herself getting corrupted by him, so she pulls away and she realizes she has to keep this distance from what Sephiroth does and what she does, because she actually considered, weirdly enough, creating remnants. Like Sephiroth has Kadajlos and Yuzu. She actually wondered if she could do that and kind of go see Cloud again. But she, of course, she's like, no, I can't do that. I couldn't interfere with Cloud that way. I never would want to hurt him. And that's why Maiden Who Travels Through the Planet really endorses this whole love thing between Cloud and Aerith, because that goes so ham on it. He more was like, Aerith wants to return because she loves Cloud. She just wants to be back with him. I don't think it's a romantic love. I think it is I always say teacher-guru relationship, but it's that times 1,000. They are pretty much like soulmates, and pretty much everything that gave her strength to keep herself individualized in the live stream, she actually does it through the thought of Cloud. And also a little bit of Marlene, which again, the bonds of memory, because yeah, Aerith is diffusing in the stream and she voluntarily chooses to remain individualized. This is very different to what people who are trapped because of grief and despair and regret. The main mission being is that she wants to free all of these souls trapped in the curse of individualization, and she wonders if Cloud can help her with that. Well, I think he can do that by extrapolating the prisoner traveler hero concept, because humanity, they are prisoners to their love of home. Remember, this is what separates Cetra from humans. They settled down, they found a love for home, and while there is a purity and a beauty in that, like Marlene said, are they coming for the bar? Are they coming to take our house? Was that very kawaii? Let Marlene do it.
Are they gonna destroy the bar? Are they gonna destroy our house?
Squeak! I keep playing that line, but it really gets me, and especially like even when the bar's destroyed, and they stand on there like, we'll build a new bar. Even when they've lost 2 freaking homes, they just build it again. Even then again, when they have to do an Advent Children, build another home. I think what Tifa realizes, what is important about home, it's the people you build it with, it's the memories you have of it. It's not the items, it's not the doodads and the nib-nabs, because I kind of got thinking, if you look around your house right now, you can kind of perceive it as like it's a monument to individualization, to your identity, and somewhat could be your ego, because it's got all your items, you've designed it, it's got your photos, and it's in a part of a town that you've grown up in. This is your town, and this is your country, and this is my nationality, and I like the things I've got in my house, and I want to protect those things, and other people want to nick it, but they've also got some nice shit. Maybe I'm trying to have some of that, and that's essentially what's built this trap for humanity, is that so many have become so egocentric, so narrow-minded, so focused on the self that they would value bricks and mortar over the wider home, the planet. And Aerith, I believe, is trying to break that down. That's why she's teaching them the flower gardens. That's why she's telling Cloud to speak to the flowers. That's why she's trying to broaden humanity's perspective, I believe. And I remember to this day, I watched a School of Life video. Yeah, School of Life. And it was about emotional intelligence. How can you improve your emotional intelligence? How can you develop it? Become a more rounded person. I remember, because the answer sticks in my mind to this day. They said the number one facilitator of that growth is travel. And I guess it kind of makes sense, because, you know, in insular communities, that's when you get the highest rates of like racism and narrow-mindedness, bigotry, and yeah, even fear-mongering. No, like Zach, it took him going to Wutai to be like, oh my god, these Wutaians, they're not a bunch of like mindless savages, because it offers perspective to see different parts of the world, how different people live. It is what rounds out the edges of being a prisoner in a narrow-minded confine to a hero who can still value things like home, but in a way that it doesn't become a detriment to the larger picture of everything. It's not entirely selfish. And I don't only believe that this is what us as humans right now need to learn. I believe that's what the characters in the game need to do. And I believe that is the ultimate extrapolation of what the gift of the goddess truly means in this game. And the last thing I'll leave off on, because this kind of backs up, I think, it's a bit speculative, but I was reading through some wiki pages of Loveless and what some people have theorized, and oh my gosh, the idea that Aerith is the center of the Loveless, Aerith and Cloud, well, in Advent Children, it's the most ridiculous scene in the world. I'll play it, see if you can catch it.
Mother will know. When she gets here, she'll decide what's best. Now, where's Mother?
Damn sign.
Oh, such a derpy scene. There's no way, because it flashes so quickly, so let's slow this down. Can you see it yet? Can you see it yet? I showed 2 mates and they was like, I don't know what I'm looking at. That portrait in the sign looks like Aerith. And in fact, they kind of hint to us that it may have been intentional that the woman in that poster resembles Aerith's OG menu portrait in FF7. What? What? I think the Square Enix are making the association of Aerith and Loveless. And of course, it definitely makes sense when the majority of Loveless is talking about the winds across like the water, creep silently across the water. Legend shall speak of sacrifice at world's end. I mean, that line was always an Aerith line. She is the goddess of Loveless. Cloud is the hero whose promise will bring about the finale of the 5th act and arguably the redemption of the entire series and the entire world. Because yeah, I mean, in this game, Cloud has to like finally finish Sephiroth off. Like, no more, I'll be just a memory bullshit. Like, he's gonna finish him and do what Aerith set out, which was free all those souls who Sephiroth has been intentionally trapping in their curse of individualization. That is what he does. He makes people over-associate with their trauma so that he can steal their soul juices, their soul giblets. But you know, once that's broken down, what that means is that all memory will do what it's supposed to do, which is contribute back to the planet and nurture it. And that in that live stream, all people are reunited. And that again could be the promised land. Of course, I'll come back to you. Even if you don't promise to wait, I'll turn knowing you'll be here. I know they pretty much set that up as well for FF8, because it bears quite a significance to like FF8's opening, you know, with Rinoa and Squall. Squall's trapped in that dark space. He's trapped up in his head. And then Rinoa comes bursting in, and like life and like all the green and the flowers comes cascading across the landscape. And that's the resolution. I get that Rinoa Squall kind of aspect as what will be Aerith and Cloud. But there we go. I am done, I think. This was me trying to be like quick and bullet point-ish on this, but I know there are so many people who love Loveless. I've seen people who've done entire essays on freaking Loveless. So if you guys have any other ideas, extrapolations, theories, let me know in the comment section below, because them switching up episode Yuffie to Intermission and introducing 2 performance-based characters, hinting to us that we are in the break of one big play. It's just too much of a juicy ad to look over. And in fact, just looking at here, it actually says on the 5th verse that is revealed at the end, the guide of Crisis Core explains that it's not the true last verse, but a verse composed by Genesis himself that reflects his new mindset. And that with Angeal and Sephiroth gone, the verse symbolizes that Genesis will take up their legacy to protect the planet himself. And yeah, you could see that when like Minerva chucked Genesis in the live stream, it's because Genesis himself realizes he was prisoner, and to get to Hero, he had to go on his travels, and Minerva sent him in the live stream to do that. Now he back. Or at least back in terms of the legacy of him is back. The G cells are in the game. Now we've got Weiss. I don't even necessarily need Genesis to appear in the game, but for all those people like, I don't want anything to do with like Loveless or Genesis, I think it's ridiculous, because I think it's such a core foundation to the game that no, Loveless isn't even just a Genesis thing. Again, it was there in OG. It's been the tip to everything. But anyway, I've got to bounce. I've got a podcast in a few hours with Sleep Easy, Baby Schrodinger's Seal, and Mike Gallagher. 3 amazing content creators who have really inspired me, especially Sleep Easy for some of this Loveless stuff. He was getting like sniffs of this whole thing being 5th act, missing act of Loveless way back. I think it's just consolidating more and more. We got your number, Najima, Katase, Amagooch. Nomura's the one trying to calm all this craziness down. You know we've entered the best timeline when shit getting too wild, even for Nomura. Comment, like, and subscribe. I'd really appreciate anything that gets my dead ass algorithm back up from the grave. Why am I not 100k subs yet, man? What's going on? I've lost my edge. It's probably because I'm keep doing 50-minute ramble videos. My friends, the fates are cruel. Until the next live stream. Video. Kupo!